What does it take to create a piece of clothing that lasts? Our guest today is fashion designer Dayne Johnston. After spending 2 decades at Zambesi, Dayne is now head designer at Kowtow, one of Aotearoa's best-known sustainable fashion brands. In today's episode, we discuss sustainability, the realities of clothing production, and what the future of New Zealand fashion might look like. Here's our conversation. Dayne, hey, thank you so much for coming in today. Welcome into our studio.
Oh, thank
Nice
you,
to see
André.
you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I wanted to ask, as a bit of a setter question for this whole interview today, what first drew you into fashion, as not only a creative practice, but ultimately, I guess, a career path for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I grew up in Wanaka, in a very remote sort of town, and I think my mum had a huge influence and she was really interested in clothes, and she actually made her own clothes, and she was really into fashion. So I think that kind of was a huge influence on me. She was kind of cutting things out on the carpet out of fabrics that she bought. She was using butterick patterns. I would help her sort of work out her outfits on a Saturday night when she went out to a party or something. So I feel like she was my inspiration to get into clothing. She bought things like More magazine, which is an historic kind of magazine, New Zealand fashion magazine. I remember poring over that, and I was looking at ID magazine and The Face, and so I was always sort of intrigued. And I think because I came from such a remote place, I was always looking, further afield at what was happening in fashion.
And how do you see fashion, Dayne? I wanted to ask you, do you see it more as art or design, industry, maybe a mix of all three? Or
Probably a mix of all three. I mean, when I start a collection, I'm always referencing art or an artist, and I love to start the palette and the direction of the collection from an artist. I think when we're talking about fashion, it's quite utilitarian, and I think it's quite practical, the way that you wear clothes. So it sort of comes from art, but then there's actually kind of a wearability and a function to what you're designing on the body. So I think it has to be practical. But then having said that, we just had the Common Material at the City Art Gallery, which was an incredible event. We actually suspended some clothes from our upcoming spring-summer collection, and they were placed in the gallery like art. So it kind of goes both ways in a way.
what do you, as an actual designer, Dayne, wish people understood more about the creative side of clothing and making?
Yeah, I think when you're developing a collection and you're thinking about designing pieces for it, there's a huge amount of work that goes into the foundation of doing that. When you enter a store and you sort of look at the clothes, I think some people don't realise how much effort is actually involved. We start from scratch at Kowtow, so we make all the fabrics from scratch. We're designing the looms, we're designing the prints, we're kind of dipping the colours, and we're sort of choosing that all prior to actually even making the garment. There's a lot of work that goes into constructing a collection. I work with a team of pattern makers who are very technically based, and they assist the ideas to come to fruition. So it's a lot of collaboration as well. We've got technical people on the team that do tech packs, and there's lots of hands that make the clothes, and I think that the involvement that goes into a collection is huge. And I think the general person that sort of appreciates it probably doesn't realize how much is actually involved.
And all the different brains that are kind of figuring out different parts of it, or one particular stage. It might start with the pencil and paper, right, on a sketchbook, and then it goes into maybe fabric swatches on a mannequin or something.
And that's also, you have an idea, and then sometimes it's not technically able to be done, so you have to workshop then. That's a problem-solving thing in design as well. So it's all about how the garment's finished, how it's going to last, how it's going to wear, how it's going to perform. There's lots of stuff that goes into fashion. I mean, some people think it's glamorous, but I think it's a sheer amount of work, and you have to be quite dedicated, and it's a lot of sort of hard work, but it's really rewarding at the end. It's kind of incredible what you can do, and we use fair trade organic cotton at Kowtow, so everything's one fibre, and we kind of use limited trims as well. So we just use tug or nut buttons or natural rubber elastic. We've stripped the zips and every sort of component out of the garment that's harmful for the environment. So when you've got that minimal sort of resource, you almost kind of extend further into the designing, and you get to a point where your creativity sort of takes over even more because you've got less to work with. It's quite cool.
And what makes a garment for you, Dayne, feel beautifully designed or made? Like, are there certain hallmarks when you see or touch something and you're like, this is just a really good piece of clothing or an amazing garment?
I mean, I'm really mindful of like the way a garment's constructed, and I'm quite meticulous at the details sort of end of it as well. I came from Zambesi as a menswear designer, and I think designing menswear, you have a very technical framework to work from, and there's lots of interior sort of details in garments and things. And I came from quite a heavily tailoring background, so when I design something, I love to look at the outside as well as the inside. So that's almost as important, the interior of the garment, as the outside.
As well as the craft that goes into fashion, it also creates an enormous amount of waste globally. We know, I found this online, 92 million tons a year, which is, I can't even fathom how much that is. From where you sit as a designer and having been in the industry for decades, where are the biggest challenges in that space, do you think, globally speaking?
It's quite overwhelming. I think when I joined Kowtow in 2023, they were doing positive things towards the planet. And I think for me, that was the first time that I sort of took and observed what the brand was doing, and it felt like I was contributing to something that was really important. So in industry standard, they use a polyester thread, and we've reverted back to doing everything plastic free. So we've used the cotton thread within the garment. The garment is completely cotton. We don't use any plastic within the clothes anymore, so there's no harmful interlinings which have glue and polyester. We've kind of stripped everything back, so eventually the cotton garment can return to the earth. At Kowtow, we've got this rule, we have to use at least 76% of the fabric, and if a design is using less than that, we basically have to cancel it or rethink it, because we're using as much as the fabric as we can, so we're not wasting it. We do within the stores at the moment a program called Relove, and you can bring your Kowtow clothes back that you're no longer wearing. Say for example, you might sort of get sick of what you've got, or you want to sort of recycle or kind of rejuvenate your wardrobe, and we offer this service where you can bring your clothes back and we give you points and we sell them within our retail store. So we have this incredible archive of vintage Kowtow on sale, so it feels like it's helping close that circularity loop, and to give those garments extra life is incredible. And the sheer volume of the pieces that have been coming in is just incredible. They're all in sort of an area in the workroom where I quite often go and visit that area, because I'm always looking at the older things in the archive and what's coming through, and it's just fascinating. We also offer a repair program, so if your Kowtow needs mended, if you've worn it a little bit too much and it's got a hole in it, or you need something fixed, a button fixed on it, we offer a service where the customer can bring it in free of charge and get the repair done, which is giving the garment longevity. I feel kind of like doing something good and doing something that is changing things will hopefully, the word that we spread is hopefully going to kind of help things. In New Zealand, we had a Threads of Tomorrow report that was released a couple of years ago, and there's a summit on in Auckland which really kind of starts to kind of acknowledge this problem. And I think it needs to come from the top, and I think there needs to be more awareness of what's happening, and I think the more people that can get behind this problem, the better. My philosophy is like, buy wisely, buy something that's going to be durable and it's going to last and have longevity. I think there's a lot of garments out there that are not quality, and the Kowtow pieces that we manufacture and design are designed to last. They've got longevity in mind, so it's buy less and have them in your wardrobe for longer. I think that's really important.
I also wanted to ask you, Dayne, and noting that Fashion Week is back now for any listener, but in 2024, our Fashion Week was cancelled, which prompted a huge amount of discussion about its place and our industry here. What did that moment, as someone who is a veteran in this industry, say to you about our sector here and kind of how it's faring?
When it didn't happen that year, I felt like it was kind of a natural pause, and sometimes you just have to take a breath And when it resumed the following season or the following year, I felt like there was more attention, there was more people engaged, and there was more publicity. And I almost think that sometimes if you do stuff too often, it becomes kind of too expected. So it was a really beautiful kind of pause that happened, and then it came back stronger than ever. It's a great excitement, like it creates kind of a really cool sort of atmosphere, and I think that it's just a really nice tool to like realize your work and actually be part of like a group activity that celebrates, you know, all the talent that we have in this country. We did this Kowtow clothing swap as part of New Zealand Fashion Week last year, and that was a really cool event because you could bring your clothes in and you could swap them with other people, and I think that sort of was really a great exercise to do, and it was so successful, and we're actually continuing it on at Melbourne Fashion Week later in this year.
Wow.
That was our participation in Fashion Week last year. We just recently exhibited in the Common Materials exhibition at the City Gallery in Wellington, and that brought together 4 different brands. It was Yume, 27 Names, J-Palm, and also Kowtow. And I think when we got together and actually united as a team, it felt like a really strong identity for Wellington. And just being involved in that group sort of activity, you kind of support each other and you make each other feel kind of really relevant, and it was really well received. I think because the gallery had been closed for 2 years, it was a real celebration of that building being reopened, and we don't really get the opportunity in fashion to exhibit in a gallery very often, and I think it felt quite grand. It was beautiful. We collaborated with Cheshire architects who designed the space. There was incredible scaffolding, and each sort of room in the gallery was really well thought about and curated. It was a really cool event to be involved in, and I think it's great for the city as well. Hopefully it'll be a biennial event.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that we could benefit by having this type of thing
absolutely.
more often?
I think the positivity that it brings into Wellington and puts a spotlight on the city, it's really important to do these things.
Who are your favourite designers, Dayne?
Yeah, I've got a few favourite designers actually. I was very lucky at Zambesi to be travelling and being a buyer as well as a designer, so I curated brands for the stores, and we ended up buying some of my hero designers. One of them was Raf Simons, and I feel like I've followed his career quite a lot, and he became sort of a huge inspiration, I think. I love the way that he uses colour. I love his references to youth culture. I kind of love the way that he operates, and I think he came from a small town in Belgium, and he grew up sort of in a similar probably way that I did in Wanaka, where it was isolated, and he was kind of looking from the outside and developed this sort of language of design that I can really relate to. And I love the idea that he's gone to Prada and he's now the co-creative director with Miuccia Prada. And I've always sort of just really admired him, and I've been lucky enough to meet him a couple of times as well, once in New York and once when I was at Paris Fashion Week in the showroom. Sometimes some people say don't meet your heroes because it kills the sort of mysteriousness of it and things, but he was really down to earth when I met him, and we chatted for about 5 minutes. The first time it was a party after his show in New York, and the second time I met him he actually remembered me as well, and he came sort of towards me at the showroom and he's like, "You've been to so many of my shows, haven't you?" And I'd been to like probably 27 shows consecutively at Paris Fashion Week, so it was a real highlight, I think, in my career to actually meet him.
Could you also just describe Fashion Week, Dayne, in Paris for someone maybe who's never been to Fashion Week before, and also maybe speak to how being there inspires you as a designer?
For me, travel's really important. It gives me stimulation. I love watching people on the street. I love the observing or entering just a new city and just like feeling the vibe of it. And we're quite quiet obviously in New Zealand, and you get to kind of be in a bigger city, which you observe what people are wearing on the street. I love sitting at a cafe and just people watching and things, and I love going to exhibitions. I love street style. I love kind of vintage shopping, and I think all that as a design resource really keeps you sort of stimulated and actually kind of aware of what's going on the other side of the world and bringing it back here and actually interpreting it. It's really cool.
Do you ever see people like wearing a garment that you've designed on the street?
All
Like
the
when
time,
you're
yeah.
like, do you kind of want to say something, or do you kind of study how they've styled it?
Yeah, it's really interesting because in Wellington especially, we are never far from somebody wearing Kowtow, and our head of creative, Bob, sort of put this thing together where he thinks that within 30 metres there's always somebody wearing Kowtow. So it's a real joy to see somebody in the street wearing something that you've designed. I feel quite humbled, and it's always a really nice sort of way of recognising your work, seeing people wear it. And I think that people, once they've got the garment, they've got their individual style and they put it together like differently to what you would put it together. But it's really inspiring seeing that. And I love the support that the brand has. There's incredible fans and incredible customers, and they're also unique and different. And I love the way that they juxtapose like what we've done.
Yeah, that must be such a unique experience, seeing someone wear something and maybe in a way that's unexpected to how you imagine.
Yeah.
Even. And
when we do the e-com shoots in Sydney, we do like a big production for our shoots every season, and we work with a stylist. Her name's Ilkin, and she comes on board, and once we've got all the samples together, her job is then to style the looks. And it's really inspiring because she puts things together in a way that I would never think that go together, but she interprets the collection from a fresh perspective, and I love that collaboration. You kind of need that in fashion to sort of mix things up.
could I also ask, Dane, like, what are your opinions on trends in fashion and that whole space of chasing a trend or following a trend? What are your thoughts?
Trends are kind of, sometimes for me it feels like too much of a formula. I think for me as a designer, I love to be aware of the trends, but I also love to move away from them as well. It's really important to be aware of them, but I think it's important to be on your own narrative as well, and you're offering kind of something that is not going to be expected. And I think that with trends you can there's forecasting and there's kind of opportunities that you can be part of, but I think the way we work at Kowtow, it's very unique, and we work 18 months in advance, so it's very difficult to think how something's going to be relative in that time period. At the end of the day, I think it's important to trust your own intuition and trust your gut. It's no point in like following something if you don't believe in it. I think there's nice to have that unique sort of perspective and offer something that's kind of completely sort of away from that realm of it, but also sort of it's great to be on your own path.
I think just lastly, Dane, you've brought in an object or maybe objects from your creative life to share with us today. Can you tell us what they are and why you brought them in today?
So I've got these stones. They're actually they feel really special to me. I did a design trip with Gosha, our founder, last year, and we went to a place called Dungeness, which is on the coast of England. And for our Spring-Summer 26 collection, which is being released at the end of July, it's been inspired by Derek Jarman.
Oh, wow.
Who's an incredible filmmaker and artist, and he went to live in this cottage. It's called Prospect Cottage, and we studied his garden as part of the inspiration to the collection, and we took the colours from his garden and the colours from that area, and we dipped all the fabrics, and we were inspired by his practice as a filmmaker and artist. Really kind of cool window frames. There's like a yellow, really distinctive like painted window frame that he has on the dark cottage. And we actually even took inspiration from the weatherboards where on the set of our elevated ecom we constructed part of the cottage, so you can see in the background of the imagery we've got the reference to the cottage as well, so we sort of carry everything through. Like it's kind of a really kind of beautiful theme to have within this collection. These stones are actually from the beach and
in England, in Dungeness.
So
am I saying that right? Dungeness.
Dungeness. Yeah. And
wow. Such amazing colours. They're almost tortoiseshell-y, one of them, and then another one has almost like a lichen.
I sort of feel like the sound of them is quite beautiful as well, the way they sort of interact together. And we did our ecom sort of video shots and things. The models were sort of using them, and the sound of them just feels kind of like you're close to nature, or the way that the textures sort of operate is really inspiring. The collections don't necessarily I mean, they do reference a lot of like his work and stuff, and I think that that was the starting point. And I think that we at Kowtow, we're always using nature as inspiration. Where he lived was very barren. It was near a nuclear plant, like a disused nuclear power station. So he kind of moved there and cultivated something beautiful from a very barren landscape as well. And I think that that in itself is kind of beauty coming from nowhere in a way. So that was a really nice thing to focus on for the beginning of the collection.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
That was Dayne Johnston, and I'm André Chomko. You can find more episodes of Articulate on YouTube, Spotify, or at thepost.co.nz/articulate. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.